Between the two of them, the inside of coats, Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to the Academy powered by VRRC Clio Cup, the final championship in a broader sense of a bigger championship. The Clio Cup second round here at Silverstone. My name is Jack Oliphant, and I'm joined as ever by Dave Marshall in the virtual commentary box. Dave, how the devil are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Here at Silverstone National, lucky enough to be one of the tracks I've actually raced in real life. And I tell you what, very, very similar experience on the sim in these Clios. It's all about momentum and super, super close lap time. So honestly, qualifying is important, but with the slipstream, anything can happen here.
Yeah, plenty of slipstreaming opportunities and, more importantly, overtaking opportunities, Dave, as well in these Clios. Although, by the looks of the Academy last week, pretty much every corner is an overtaking opportunity for these drivers. 2 20-minute races. If you're not familiar with VRRC format, then where on earth have you been? It's the same for the Super Touring Championship that we had last night. It was the same for League Champions, and it's been the same for every single Academy race that we've had over the past 4 seasons. They've had a 60-minute practice and 15-minute qualifying, which we're about to get underway in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes time or something like that. First race is decided, obviously, on qualifying. The second race is a 20 minutes, but it's a reverse grid. Top 10 reverse grid. No need to worry about the full reverse grid or anything like that. So if your favourite driver ends up spinning off and coming back further back down the field, keep an eye. They might get a reverse grid pole. Keep an eye out on that. So what on earth are we racing for today? Well, there we go. The prizes are on your screen right now. The Clio Cup prizes this is for the individual championship. First place gets the AOC Gaming headsets. I've got a pair right next to me, and they work very well. 2 hours of online one-to-one coaching as well. Invaluable for these drivers who are hoping to take the step up into the sort of more serious sim racing championships, included in VRRC, like the Super Touring Championship I mentioned earlier. Second place, Power Max car balloting kit. Very useful for the car lovers in your life, which most people who sim race are. And 1 hour one-to-one online coaching as well. And then third place is really dedicated to improving you as a driver. 1 hour race car setup coaching and 1 hour one-to-one coaching. And for me personally, I would be very excited about the race car setup, as I know nothing about how to set a race car up. But Dave, those prizes really are dedicated to trying to lift these drivers into the stratosphere of the Super Touring Championship and beyond. And from what we saw last night, it's really working this series.
Yeah, it really is. We had Paul Zanetecchi who managed to get a third place overall in everyone. So if anyone who didn't watch it last night, make sure you go and check it out on YouTube. We ran a Super Touring League where it's split between silver and gold drivers, and Paul Zanetecchi in silver class managed to grab a third place overall. So very impressive drive. And Kyle Felvus also doing, he round one, you can see on the screen, did a phenomenal job at Brands Hatch, but he did a great job in the Super Touring, managed 2 top 10s as well there, Jack. So a very, very impressive showing from the academy drivers, showing that the transition into the bigger championships is really working, and this is really beneficial.
Yeah, so if you are sat there thinking, I haven't really turned much of a wheel in sim racing competitively, and you want to win yourself a pair of OBP hydraulic pedals, well, the probably quickest way to try and do that is to compete in the academy, learn everything you need to learn, and then get on there on circuit in a couple of months' time. Anyway, looking back at round one, Carl Felvus took the most amount of points. Robin Walters was in second place, and Martin Johnson in third at Brands Hatch. And it was an extremely hectic Brands Hatch, and for the most part, very clean as well. Obviously, some judicials had to be put out for that reverse grid, but that's nearly always the way. Carl Felvus then, with 31 points, tied in first place with Robin Walters. 31 points apiece. However, Robin Walters has got that fastest lap as well, which I'm sure he'll be very pleased about and take some real confidence coming into Silverstone this time round. Martin Johnson, then I mentioned before, he was third most amount of points picked up at Brands Hatch, and considering we've only had one round, you can probably guess where Martin Johnson is sat. 29 points in third place in the championship. Only 1 point behind is Paul Zanetecchi and Mick Sutton. Both joined on fourth position, and Nicky Taylor in sixth with John Jones. A bit of a gap between Nicky Taylor and John Jones, to be honest. You got John Jones in seventh, Andy Carroll in eighth, Paul Laramie in ninth, and Kenny Press rounding out the top 10. And then you've got the Nathan Black, Hayden Phillips, Daniel Adams, Simon Thorpe, and Brad Smith of the world as well, from 11th down to 15th position. But if we have a quick look back at the top standings there, Dave, realistically, that's a very, very tight top six, isn't it? And I was mentioning it earlier on last week, I should say. If you presented me with a timing sheet that said any one of those top six had won a race, I would not be surprised in the slightest.
Yeah, exactly right. This is proven to be an extremely tight championship at the moment. I'm going to put my neck on the line a little bit and say I've got a little bit of a favourite for tonight, and I think Tom O'Farrell spotted it as well. There's a driver on the grid who we think is just holding a little bit back. He's being shown real glimpses of absolute stellar performance, but in qualifying, we're going to wait and see whether he can really deliver. Mick Sutton there, down in 5th place, doesn't really show how fast he was going at Brands. He was very unlucky to collect a car in the bottom of Paddock Hill Bend, if you remember, Jack, and there wasn't really anything he could do to avoid it. Ended up in the wall on the right, and he still managed to get 5th place in the championship. So tonight, keep a watch out for Sutton. Yeah,
well, you were talking about have a look at what they've got to deliver. Well, we best have a look at what they've got to deliver. We're going to have a look at a hot lap in the Clio Cup. We are around Silverstone National.
So across the line here for round 2 at the Clio Cup Academy, powered by VRRC. Turn 1, it's 4th gear, using the brake just to initially turn it and then straight back to throttle, carrying as much apex speed as possible. Make sure you don't run out on that AstroTurf. The car gets a little bit unstable, you definitely lose time there, pulls you back a bit. Down to 3rd gear on the left apex, going into Maggots and Beckett's. Really late the throttle there. It's very easy to get super hard on the throttle and push the front end on and lose a valuable few tenths going down this club straight. So a nice and tight line on exit there, and you'd be surprised how much time you can find. Down towards Brooklands, what a great corner. Braking at the marker, down to 3rd gear, just trail braking on that front right, pitching that back wheel up in the air, and then not too hard on the throttle down to Luffield. I carry 3rd, but you can also do 2nd here if you want a little bit more rotation. 3rd gear just makes me feel I can get on that throttle a little bit sooner and just use the diff to pull me all the way out. Make sure you tune in at 7:20 on Wednesday night on VRRC's Facebook and YouTube page.
And there we go, a successfully succinct lap of the Silverstone National Circuit there in the Clio Cup car, provided by Dave Marshall. Now, Dave, the drivers have been going for a fair few minutes now, so we've got a rough idea of who's maybe setting in some decent times. Robin Walters right at the top there to start with a 104.8. Only a 10th down is Nicky Taylor, Mick Sutton in 3rd. Paul Laramie and Nathan Blank rounding out the top 5. Then you got Sanatecci and Felvus. If anything, you could argue that they're probably going to be slightly disappointed with where they sit at the moment. But plenty of time left to go. And such a short circuit means that drivers can come into the pit, strap a new set of boots on, get out there and be confident that they're able to set 3 or 4 flying laps.
Yeah, I'm just watching this now. I think a few of the drivers here were struggling with traffic a little bit. See Kyle Felvus following Mick Sutton. Mick Sutton looks like he's gone a little bit wide, maybe.
Yeah.
I believe that was Sutton. I might be mistaken there. No, it is definitely Sutton. Nicky Taylor is right up behind. He's going to have a good slipstream towards the finish line. Here, Sutton peels off into the pit lane. Kyle Felvus is now coming across the line behind Nicky Taylor. I would say, realistically, to make this slipstream work, maybe about 4 car lengths back from the car in front. Otherwise, you end up catching him up too early. So I reckon Kyle is actually a little bit closer here. Let's see if they can make it work. But Kyle actually really needs to get a good time on the board. We know he's got real good pace in the car, and he's definitely a faster driver than 4 tenths off pole. So he needs to make this lap count.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting conundrum, really, isn't it? Because a lot of people would say if you want the slipstream, you then to the maximum effect, then you want to be as close to the back bumper because where the air is thinnest. But however, you then potentially miss your braking zone. It's very hard as a racing driver not, if you're this close to a driver, not to look at their car in front. Everybody says, oh, you've got to look at the corner, you've got to look at your braking zones, X, Y, Z, and that's absolutely correct. But you still always got half an eye on the car ahead, and you sort of drive reactively instead of actually proactively, shall we say. And like you mentioned, you want to be about 4 tenths of a second back, so there's that little bit of leeway, and you can see more of the track as well, because if your vision is completely filled with a car, you see a lot less of the track, don't you? About where Felvus is now, I would argue, is potentially bang on the money, and that shows really, because Felvus goes into 4th place. He said he was better than 4 tenths off pole. He's halved it, 2 tenths off pole, and to be honest, I think now he's actually in a better situation.
He is indeed, but I tell you what, the reason why that gap's opened is that lap Nicky Taylor went faster still, so Nicky Taylor goes on to pole. Kyle Felvus maybe, actually that didn't look too bad there. Kyle Felvus could be on an alright lap here if he can pick up that slipstream from Nicky Taylor in front. Obviously he's fallen someone very, very quickly indeed, so actually he's in a great position here to do some damage. We haven't quite seen the form from Mick Sutton yet, whether that's been a bit of traffic or just not getting in the floor. You can see there, Nicky Taylor super late on the brakes, going into Luffield there. I mean, that there is where the time is gaining from on screen, from what I can see. He is really good on the brakes.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting Silverstone National. There are already four corners, essentially. A bit like Brands Hatch, isn't it? However, all 4 corners potentially you could argue have a slightly different line. I mean, maybe not the first 2, but Brooklands and Luffield, certainly you could say there's a potentially a different line that you could take. You could sort of try and really send speed in, a bit like Nicky Taylor did there, run really wide and then V the second part. Luffield, I believe it is. Or you can do a little bit more what Carl Felvus did, where he slowed it down, made sure he got a really good apex through Brooklands, which is the left-hander, and then almost just hug the inside consistently around the right-hander of Luffield. So the 2 different lines. It depends, you know, on driver preference. It also depends on high-powered, low-powered, front-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive, all these sort of things. But realistically, what we're seeing there is, I think Nicky Taylor potentially being more comfortable with the line that he's chosen, and Felvus maybe just not having quite the bravery on the brakes to commit the speed in.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. These front-wheel drive, low-powered cars, that is definitely the line to choose. Brake nice and late, but brake as you turn to the apex, rather than trying to slow your car and then carry the speed through. Nicky's definitely got, it looks like, the gist of that corner, and that's what's really helping him get that little extra few tenths out of a lap. I mean, you're not even talking a few tenths really, you're talking a tenth. So these drivers are battling incredibly close together. We saw Mick Sutton look like he was just on the start of a bit of a flyer when we were on board with him there. He's about to come across the line as Hayden Phillips gets all a bit skew with going in. Will this be the lap for Mick Sutton? A 104, a 105 dead, so not quite enough. A little improvement on his lap time, was it? Yeah, it was a little improvement to get him a bit closer, but still not quite enough to get near that pole lap of Nicky Taylor.
5.5 minutes to go though, plenty of laps still to be turned around Silverstone, but realistically, you're always talking about very small margins between the drivers at this circuit, and then the problem is you get qualifying, it's all very good, fine and dandy, well done you for getting pole position. Realistically, if you're on pole, Dave, you're the only driver out there who doesn't have a slipstream, so the likelihood of you being first by the first 3 lap mark is pretty small, to be honest, unless you've really got a hang of Silverstone that nobody else seems to, which is very rare.
Yeah, it is really. It is very, very rare. It just caught me eye there. Sorry, Jack. But Paul Laramie up to 6th place at the moment, 3 tenths off Paul. This is a driver who, I think you'll agree, has been improving throughout the academy, and he really seems to be linking this car and track together and's got some really good pace here. So this is a great looking result, or a great possible result for Paul Laramie here, nearly inside that top 5 position.
Yeah, Martin Johnson, I'm looking, he's in 11th place, but he's the only driver out there at the moment with a green sector, Sector 1. So as we flick to Martin, he doesn't have that big a gap to catch up to even likes of Brad Swift and John Jones, who, by the way, are tied down to the thousandth of a second, which is, I can't believe, something we haven't mentioned. I didn't clock it, to be honest. But as Johnson's about to cross the line, what has he got up the sleeve? Is he good enough to even find half a tenth? I think it was potentially an invalidated lap time because it didn't seem to come up as anything there, Dave, which is a bit of a shame because, as I said, his first sector was very good. Nathan Blank, green sector 1, and Paul Zanatachi as well, green sector 1. Zanatachi definitely will be very disappointed with a 10th place after such a strong showing yesterday in the Super Touring Championship. He'll be very much hoping to really come into the academy with a lot of momentum, even though it's a completely different car, and really stake a claim and come into one of the big boys. Nathan Blank then, as I mentioned before, up to 4th position after a really good run. Only 100th off Mick Sutton in 2nd place, only 100th and a half basically ahead of Phillips as well. So as Zanatachi comes across the line, remember it's a green sector 1. What can Zanatachi do? I don't think he's hooked up the 2nd sector, and that's gutting because there's only 3 minutes left and probably not a lot of life in those tyres.
Yeah, I mean, he almost absolutely matched his best lap that he's done in this qualifying session. So he was definitely on for a better lap there, but as he said, just didn't quite hook up that last sector to put that lap together. Brad Smith hasn't set the world alight in Sector 1, but can he make it up in Sector 2? About to come across the line here. Let's keep an eye on the lap times as he's about to come across the line now. Will he go faster? He will not. A 105.2, so not, unfortunately. Oh, sorry, it is an improvement for Brad, but not an improvement on position. Still in P7 behind Paul Laramie there. Incredibly close lap times from 3rd back over. I tell you what, it's Nicky Taylor and Robin Walters. Look at Robin Walters on that same line choice as Nicky Taylor, breaking it towards the apex, and I think that's what's really given them the advantage. Robin Walters currently on a green sector 1, so this could be a great lap for the pole.
I tell you what, if you're Robin Walters and you are 0.026 of a second, that's 200ths basically, off pole position, I challenge anyone out there who's watching this, if you're watching this on a laptop particularly, when he goes into pole, and now this makes it a better challenge actually, by 5,000ths of a second. I challenge anyone to get your phone out, get on the stopwatch, and manage to press start and press stop within 5,000ths of a second. It's not possible. I don't think the iPhone will even let you that sort of thing. It's absolutely incredible. It's blink of an eye stuff, and that probably takes still about a couple of hundredths of a second. That is incredibly close. We're talking about the width of a hair across the line from Robin Walters against Nicky Taylor there, as Carl Felvus goes wide through Brooklands. Luffield. Actually, I can never remember which one's which. Brooklands, I think, is the left-hander. And Rich won't help his lap time at all, but as he hunkers up behind another driver, a slipstream maybe on, he straight lines the exit here, which is a good run down towards the start-finish line. We're expecting potentially one flying lap from Kyle here, as he's in third place. He has improved his time again, but not good enough to get into the top 2. If he wants to shake it with Walters and Taylor, this has got to be good.
Yeah, and you know what? Was that a bit of strategy there? He let the driver through. Is he thinking this is a really good opportunity?
No.
As he loses the back end on the exit of turn 1. I tell you what, that is very much iconic in this circuit in real life as well. You get on the outside of that curb, and as you try and come back on, because it's got a real edge to it, it really grabs the back of the car and can put it sideways. So, unfortunately, that to me looks Kyle might have lost a little bit of time there in Sector 1. Meanwhile, Nathan Blanc is going very, very quickly as well, just behind Daniel Adams. So can Nathan Blanc put this lap together to get him further up to possibly even starting in the podium positions?
There's every possibility, isn't it? Actually, I just saw Robin Walters. He was down in Sector 1, but he was up in Sector 2, so there is time still out there that he could grasp, but he wasn't able to hook it up, so as the checker flag is going to drop as Nathan Blanc comes across the line. I think Nathan Blanc's going to be the first of a fair few drivers. Actually, no, he did get across the line there before it stopped, but it wasn't an improvement by Blanc. Robin Walters is going to have to hold on to that 104.8 and hope that it's good enough to stay ahead of Nicky Taylor, who's not up in Sector 1, although Hayden Phillips, to be fair, I think Hayden was always there. For some reason, the timing tower put him further down when he had a crash earlier on.
I think he got disconnected from the server and he's joined back in.
That'll be it. I thought he just crashed, but you may well be right. Carl Felvus wasn't able to improve that little slide at the back of Coppice. Will not be helping him at all, that'll be sure, but he'll be confident that he can race from there in the top 2 with the slipstream. Mick Sutton and Nathan Blanc are probably the 2 drivers that you maybe thinking about challenging for the top 3, but realistically they're going to have to get a move on as Nathan Blanc. He needs to put his foot in, but with a car going a little bit slow and a little bit wide, you're always a bit hesitant.
Perfect for slipstream.
I was going to say, good for a slipstream. He's got a good slingshot, hasn't he? What can Nathan Blanc pull up with here? He's not improved in Sector 1, but it's not a slow Sector 1, put it that way. As Blanc goes through, it's not an improvement. It's still going to be in 5th place, and there's pretty much everybody that's crossed the line. We're going to run you through the top 10 very quickly before we chat to our pole sitter. Speaking of pole sitter, Robin Williams in 1st place, Nicky Taylor in 2nd, Carl Felvus in 3rd, Mick Sutton will be 4th with Nathan Blanc in 5th, Hayden Phillips in 6th with Paul Laramie in 7th place. Brad Smith was in 8th with John Jones being 9th, and Paul Zanatachi probably slightly disappointed to be just inside the top 10. And Dave, you have our pole sitter Robin Walters to have a chat to.
I do indeed, and I mean, when it comes to a track and putting a qualifying lap in, you've seen how close the grid is here, Robin, so you must be fair delighted just to snatch that pole position by 5,000ths of a second.
Yeah, big time. Wasn't really expecting it. I think, judging by the practice times, it was close between quite a few people. I think Nicky, Nathan, Mick, myself. It was always going to be just who can pull out the lap. So. And to be fair, I did it the 2nd time, so I put in what I thought might be enough, and then Nicky came along and beat it, and then I genuinely didn't think I'd be able to do it on the 2nd run, but it just seemed to hook up a couple of the corners nicely.
To be fair, we were on board. We spotted a good Sector 1 from you, and we thought this could be the chance, and we were hoping it wasn't commentator's curse, but you've got a great last corner and noticing a great braking line as well, going into Luffield towards that left-hander, and as you said, it just looked absolutely hooked up, and sure enough came across the line 5 thousandths in front of Nicky Taylor. I've got to ask, obviously a lot of drivers are that close on times. How important do you think it's going to be just to get a nice clean start and try and break that slipstream nice and early on this grid?
It'll be massive because it is really, really hard to pass in these cars. Maybe a little bit easier this weekend to last week's race. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I'm just hoping to get off the line. I mean, it was a real struggle getting off the line. I think it was Kyle actually last week who really shot off the line, and I haven't been able to nail the starts yet. So I could be in third, fourth by the first corner. Who knows?
Well, the worry is Kyle is behind you on the grid, so best of luck anyway, Robin. Huge congratulations on putting it on P1, and it's looking good, mate. Good luck for race 1.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave.
And that was Dave chatting to our pole sitter, Robin Walters. Now, as we said before, Dave, I mean, 5 thousandths of a second is quite literally a half a hair's width, isn't it? That is basically the difference. The two laps could be pretty much identical, but coming out the final corner, we could have seen Robin Walters put his foot down half a foot before Nicky Taylor, and that would have been the difference in the end.
Yeah, I mean, 5 thousandths is absolutely crazy. And to be fair, let's not take this away. He was 5 thousandths ahead of Nicky Taylor, and they have a little bit of a gap between third. But if you look at the gap between third and 8th place, we're talking about minuscule gaps again, like it is from first to second. So realistically, these times have positioned them in qualifying and who is the fastest driver on the grid, but that will not be the finishing position of this race. These drivers are all so evenly matched in these cars.
You will look a fool if it is, though, won't you? No, I'm kidding. It's pretty much guaranteed not to. You're absolutely right. And realistically, around here, though, we've mentioned it so many times, and we will continue mentioning it because it's probably going to be the biggest talking point and the biggest reason why we see lots of overtakes. But the slipstream, realistically, you probably have to have about a 3/10 advantage over the course of a lap to pull away from a driver here, purely because of the slipstream will be so powerful for the one behind. But if they've got that advantage of about 2/10, that might be enough to. Carl Felvus might be able to stay with them, but he might not be able to really make a lunge for him.
Yeah, so obviously we run a coaching session masterclass on a Monday before, we get into the academy on the Wednesday, and I was saying how important it is to put a bit of trust in the drivers. And this race is 20 minutes long, so if you've got a driver in front of you that is quick and you can consistently work with them, it's maybe actually better to go longer in the race before you start putting their moves on. Otherwise, you might back both of yourselves up into the pack behind. So I would say if Robin and Nicky can get their heads down and get away together, the best chance they have got is to work together to pull away from the rest of the grid.
So many variables, so many variables, so many tactics, so many things that can go wrong in motorsport as well. Obviously, we're talking about everything as if it's a perfect situation. Very rarely goes that way. All these drivers will have some kind of ideal picture in their head, and once they hit the clutch and they try and get off the line, by the time they get to Cops, that ideal will be completely out the window. But with only 5 seconds left, we've got the engine notes rising and the lights coming on. And for the first time tonight on the Academy Clio Cup, we are racing. Robin Walters on the outside of the more darker orange, Nicky Taylor in the yellow. Taylor is going to be in second place, but as they fly towards Cops, it's a good start for Taylor, and he's up into first place ahead of Walters. I think Carl Felvus holds on to that third place. Not quite the impact he had of Brands Hatch off the start line, but still very happy, I'm sure, to keep into that podium position for now. But Nicky Taylor, with his elbows out, style of racing, is in the race lead. Robin Walters feared that he might not get the start off the line. His fears came true. It wasn't as bad as he was suggesting, but it's still not ideal for him. Nathan Blank up to fourth place, Mick Sutton in fifth, Paul Lamy sixth, as Brad Smith and Martin Johnson go past Hayden Phillips, who unfortunately may have a little bit of internet connection problems. I think I saw him with a little bit of ping earlier on, as Phillips and Zanatechi fall down the order as well. Smith and Press are swapping positions, and this is why it's very hard to decide who's going to be where, because everybody flies into Brooklands and Luffield for the first time, side by side. Mick Sutton on the inside, but Nathan Blank, trying to get that cut back. He's going to be on the outside for Brooklands, and then there we go, hugging the inside. Mick Sutton, brilliantly done there, and I tell you what, Sutton using all of his experience now in the VRRC Academy that he's been learning and the League of Champions to get up the order on that opening line. Fernando Alonso would be proud, but Nicky Taylor is the driver who's really pulled rank here as Laramie goes for the move around the outside into Cops. That is probably the bravest move in motorsport, to be honest, apart from on the outside of Packard Hill.
He's got it. Oh.
He's not quite got it. Paul Laramie has the door slammed in his face by Nathan Frank. Almost chopped his nose off there, to be honest. But as they go into the second corner, it's just blank ahead of Laramie.
Yeah, you know what? I actually think he did have that there. He showed a nose, but he just thought this is maybe not worth it. But I tell you what, this has backed him right up into Martin Johnson, literally on his back bumper. And there's Brad Smith tucked also in behind all these three. Can I just say how... as we were just about to say, who was that got through Martin Johnson with a move on Paul Laramie? Now it's Martin Johnson. See that? Wheel-to-wheel contact between the two cars. They've both pushed each other wide. Martin Johnson has ended up in the gravel trap in a spin. This is crucial that he gets back going again. Who's that off in the gravel on the right-hand side? Hayden Phillips with a spin on the exit as well. Was that caused by another driver, or was that the curb? We're not quite sure, but let's see if Martin Johnson can get his way back up to a P10 for that reverse grid. That's his best chance for a good role reversal is what I was trying to say there. Dear me. But yeah, what a hectic start that was. I was about to say, actually super clean between all the drivers there.
Yeah, right up until we saw that little bit of contact, wasn't it? But I suppose that's slightly inevitable. I mean, a lot of people, when the Clio Cup was on the BTCC paddock, a lot of people said the Clio Cup was basically a mini BTCC series, which is ironic actually, because now the minis is a mini BTCC series. Anyway, Zanetecchi on the outside of Paul Laramie, 6th and 7th, going into Brooklands. A little bit more contact, as we mentioned before. There's going to be plenty of people trying to get past in here. Is one of the overtaking opportunities on the circuit. A little bit wide by Laramie, allows press. Up the inside of Zanetecchi, but actually I think they're side by side. I can't quite get the perspective, Dave. But what I can say is it's very close.
It is very close, and I was going to say it's not quite Clio Cup because there isn't a car on its roof yet, so
that's very true.
We'll hopefully not see that. Currently, Nicky Taylor though done the fastest lap of the race on that previous lap, so he's trying to really stretch his legs here on Robin Walters just behind. But this might be a little bit of tactics from Robin. He did say he wants to get his head down. Is this them trying to pull away from the rest of the pack together? He actually looks maybe a little bit closer than he did at the start of this lap now. It looks like Walters is actually really close behind the back of Taylor just up ahead.
I don't know if it's a glitch with the timing screen or something, but I saw 0.6 of a second, then they went through a corner, and now it's 0.2, and he's almost looking like going for a race move.
Yeah.
But, it's a huge send by Felvus on Mick Sutton, who missed the apex. Apologies. Oh, Dave, take over.
Yeah, as you said, it was a bit of a shock for both of us. Kyle Felvus with an incredibly late move on the brakes. Mick Sutton getting up the inside, but you can see this is now side by side all the way down to turn 1. Mick Sutton is still there, look, half a door alongside. Will he give it a little brake check, tuck in and then get on the power, or is he not? No, he's going to be early on the brakes, but Kyle Felvus, you can see just cocking the inside wheel there on the back. That slowed both of them down though, look. This is now right in the hands of Nathan Blank, who's really getting on the back of both of them. And I tell you what, there's a really big gap opened between the back of Nathan Blank and Paul Laramie. So I don't know really what's happened there. And we saw who was that? That was Kenny Press that lost the back end. So I don't know whether that was contact with another car or whether that curb really just hooked him left there. We'll have to see if we can find out what happened there.
Yeah, as the action continues with a huge dive to the outside by Mick Sutton, and I think the cutback is probably the wiser move, which is exactly what he's trying here. But that overcommittal
he's left it open
into the corner has allowed Nathan Blank to go through, and Mick Sutton twice in 2 laps has been taken up the inside by another driver, thanks to the fact that he just ran a little too wide. And I have recovered from my cough, but I do have a sore throat, so apologies if I can get spiral into another one. But these guys are getting me far too excited.
Yeah, that was an absolute great move from Nathan Blank. Just the right distance back from the car in front, just to gauge that run. And look at this, Nathan Blank with a run on Kyle Felvus down towards turn 2. Kyle Felvus goes defensive on the right-hand side. This is where will Nathan be early on the brakes and try and get the cut back? In fact, it looks like he's going to try and do it round the outside. Has he made this work? I know that's a bit wide, but I don't think he has. And this is going to allow Mick Sutton to now get on the back. I tell you what, I'm actually quite impressed with that. Nathan managed to almost lose no time there by going that wide, and in fact he's got a bit of side slipstream here down the inside of Kyle Felvus. Is he going to make that move stick? What a move, Nathan Blank up the inside of Kyle Felvus, and Mick Sutton's going to try and follow him through. Nathan Blank's got defensive on the inside, and I'm nearly off my seat.
I was going to say, I'm glad you took that, because I'm basically going cross-eyed with everything that's going on in front of us. It's ridiculous trying to carry on and figure out where to go is the task that now Mick Sutton has, because Nathan Blank has gone through into third place. Carl Felvus in fourth, which is pretty much where he stayed as they went into Brooklands on the field. And then Mick Sutton just behind now as Felvus looks up the inside. He's going to be brave enough to try and take that. Maybe that's a little bit of young naivete, but he's absolutely centred through the inside of Cops. Not somewhere I would do it, but it's still very, very impressive as he goes now across to the racing line, and Blank had to come off the throttle so much to avoid a massive crash as Felvus runs wide through Maggots and Beckett's, and that's a good late apex by Blank as well. He hooked the curb up nicely, got a good power down. Felvus got out the corner, got away with it out the corner. That's because he had to do so much slowing down going into it, as he has to defend now into Brooklands, and the BRDC grandstand is getting putting on a show for the BRDC is what I'm attempting to say, as I'm attempting to figure out where on earth Nathan Blank is going around the outside of Brooklands as they go through Luffield for what feels like the umpteenth time. It's the 6th time. It's just touch. Calm down a bit. Just a bit. Just.
It has, and I tell you what, that to me really showed the damage of this slipstream. Nathan Blank there, come from about 2 cars back and then just had the outright speed. Let's watch this, the lead battle. Robin Walters, let's try and gauge whether or not he's just monitoring this and trying to keep his gap to Nicky Taylor, just to see whether he doesn't go too defensive and then just get a little bit later on in the race as Brad Smith goes for a move up the inside of Simon Thorpe. Simon Thorpe actually very, very high up and doing very well indeed.
He is indeed, as Brad Smith is got some contact, unfortunately. What was Brad Smith? And Simon Thorpe gets it back, but not from, it's from another driver, essentially. I can't actually figure out who that was, to be honest. Was it John Jones, potentially?
John Jones, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
3 abreast going down towards Luffield.
Yeah, so they are 3 abreast, but I think it's going to really be Adams and Smith. As Jones actually, no, Jones has got a good run as well. He breaks earlier than the other 2, which means he's not made it 3 wide through the left-hander, but he's probably going to go for that cutback manoeuvre as Smith is into 8th place. Adams in 9th, then Jones and Johnson forming up the full 4-way battle for what is essentially pole position here, Dave, in the top 3 places, because Smith will be 3rd place on the grid. Adams would be 2nd and Jones would be 1st, but to be honest, they don't care about that. They want to finish as high as possible and just rub in, and that can be really dangerous as they go flying towards Cops Corner with a massive barrier on the left-hand side and a massive pit lane wall on the right-hand side. But Jones has gone through. That's 2 bits of contact in 2 laps, to be honest with Jones. I'm not sure Judicials will have something to say about that, but as we flip towards Adams, you can see Johnson trying to look up the inside, and Maggots and Beckett's and John Jones has gone wide, and Johnson flies up the inside. There's going to be more contact between Adams and Jones, and at this time Jones is on the receiving end of contact through Maggots and Beckett's as Adam goes through, and we focus back on Mick Sutton, who's having to defend/attack Carl Felvus. We cut to it so late, I'm not entirely sure which way round it is, but last time we were here, Sutton was behind Felvus, so I imagine Felvus was the one defending, and in the end he had to go onto the grass to take avoiding action.
Yeah, so that to me looked like Kyle Felvus tried to stick it around the outside of Mick Sutton and keep his foot in it. Ended up going across the grass and having a little bit of a cutting spree. And I tell you what, that was nearly a T-bone section into the right. But look at the speed Felvus has from that slipstream. He's going to have the outside line, but cut to the inside. What a brilliant overtake, calculating that absolutely perfectly. And I tell you what, I don't know what's happened, but Nathan Blank must have got past Kyle Felvus at some point, because he's gone. He's up the road, he's away.
He is indeed, and these drivers at the front have driven incredibly clean, haven't they, really? We've seen how it can go slightly wrong in that fight for the top 10, but realistically the fight for the top 4 has been pretty clean, all in fairness, basically, in my opinion, anyway. I'm sure the judicials will pop up and there'll be a few protests, as there always is, but the reverse grid is still yet to come, so let's pretend that this is clean and the reverse grid will give us a new sample size, shall we? Because it's going to be very interesting. As Laramie goes for that V-ing shape, he goes for that early apex, and then sort of has to get the car turned. He doesn't quite make the second apex, realistically, though, so it's not as good a run out the corner as he's probably hoping. Zanatachi who, by the way, went from 10th down to about 11th or 12th and is now back up to 2nd. He's driven quite a good recovery race, but I don't think he really has the overall pace here, Dave, as Nicky Taylor sets purple sector 1.
Yeah, it just looks like he's a little bit off from where he needs to be to really start to hassle these guys in front. It's nice to see Martin Johnson, you know, he suffered from that collision near the start of the race, as we see both Nick Sutton and Kyle Felvus see they're starting to trip each other up, and look at how quickly Paul Laramie is closing onto the back of these two. I tell you what, this from 4th all the way to 7th, Paul Zanetachi's not out of this. This from 4th to 7th is now open before the end of the race.
Yeah, as Laramie looks up the inside, but not as much as Mick Sutton looks up the inside of Carl Felvus. To be fair, that is probably one of the racing lines to angle your car in to the apex and then hit the braking zone, a bit like what you do at Snetterton under the bridge from Brundle and Nelson. It's a similar sort of attack of the corner. You angle it in and then hit the brakes. Well, you're doing a rear-wheel drive anyway. I'm not sure about front-wheel drive. Dave, you'd probably have to correct me on that. But it's still an extremely fun corner, as Zanetachi is bigger, larger than life, I'd say, in the rear view mirror of Laramie's car. Certainly larger than he was in that last lap, and that's because he gained 0.4 of a second.
Yeah, he did indeed. And I tell you what, both Pauls, should I say, are driving very, very well here. Kyle's just starting to stretch his legs a bit now with Mick Sutton behind. I think Mick Sutton's going a little bit too attacking. Whoa, as Mick Sutton goes very deep on the brakes. I think he's going a little bit too attacking, too far back from Kyle, so the move's not really going to stick, but what's actually doing is it's really slowing down his lap time, and we know Mick's got pace in the car, so I think he just needs to try and get back on his hot lap pace. But this is Paul Laramie going for a look up the inside. Oh, they've both gone a little bit straight on, but Paul Zanetachi is going to take the advantage of this and get both of them.
I was going to say, I think Zanetachi's pressure really probably caused that. You could probably call him an investor because he had a stake in that T-bone, unfortunately. It was really good driving by Zanetachi in the end to really pile it on, and he's got himself into the top 5.
Yeah, phenomenal drive from, as you say, it was just inside the P10 in qualifying. He's got himself up to P5. I wouldn't say out of pure outright speed, even though on that last lap, actually, he was only a 10th off what Kyle Felvus is doing. But it's just smart driving, thinking of the championship and planning this out. Brilliant drive so far.
The Carl Felvus, like you mentioned before, though, is really sort of pulled away, but not as much as these two. Robin Walters, since getting into the race, hasn't quite had the overall pace, has he? And Nicky Taylor, who did put in a fair few consistent laps in qualifying, it wasn't just a one-off, he was on pole position for the majority of the time, really sort of stretched his legs somewhat. The gap is 1.2 seconds. Nathan Blank, though, is the gap that you really got to look at. He's 5.5 seconds back on Robin Walters. And to be fair, Nathan Blank has done brilliantly well, hasn't he, Dave? I don't think we've really mentioned it enough because obviously we've seen the battle for the top 4, but once upon a time, Nathan Blank was in that battle about 10 minutes ago, and since then, he's pulled away. He's 3.5 seconds up the road. Yeah,
I mean, once upon a time, Nathan Blank was struggling to get into the top 10. So battling here for 3rd place, what an improvement he's had as a driver, and definitely in the bucket for Driver of the Day award.
Yeah, and I've just been notified that Nathan Blank actually has the fastest lap as well, just gone, I believe. So he's really trying to do his best to catch up. 5 minutes to go. Well, I'm not entirely sure if it's if any amount of fastest laps could really get him there, to be honest, because we've only got about 4 laps to go. But it's going to be interesting to see what he can pull off. Still, Robin Walters and Nicky Taylor, they'll be starting for the back, so the test will be different in race number 2, Dave. A little bit more elbows out, I imagine, probably a little bit more conservative driving from some, elbows out driving from another. Different strategies might come into play, or you know, it's basically anyone's game, that one, isn't it? But they've certainly done well in race 1.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to remember it's early in the championship, and this is probably a position where, you know, whichever driver it is, whether it's Robin or whether it's Nicky, gets the win. Whoa, as we see a slowdown there. Who's that? That's going backwards. That's a strange one.
I'm not sure.
That was
I'd take
Paul
my eyes off
Laramie.
it.
That was Paul Laramie. So braked on the straight line to let Nick Sutton back through. So was that a repayment for putting the lunge on and not quite making it stick and running him wide? Or interesting to see that. I believe that's probably what it was. There's Mick Sutton. Absolutely clatters the curb. I take it that's probably his tracking out after that hit. But yeah, as I was saying before, you've got Nicky Taylor and Robin Walters, both drivers probably thinking we just sort of want to work together to try and get through this grid. They've obviously got the pace in the car. But I tell you what, Nathan Blank could be the one to watch going into race 2, you know.
I think he's going to have to be. I mean, with a performance like he's had, he's going to have to be worth noting, shall we say, worth following. But to be honest, the whole grid is worth following. So good luck to Tom O'Farrell on the broadcast. That's all I can say. What's your sort of opinion on John Jones? I know, Dave, that the judicials will come in and be a part of it. But at the back there's a little bit of naughty contact. How much, I suppose the question I'm asking is, how much is too much? How much is rubbing his racing? And I suppose, is there an easy way of drawing the line, or is every situation that the judicials come to, is it all completely treated separately? What's sort of the difference?
So the way I would look at it is, if a driver goes for a lunge up the inside and doesn't manage to hold his line on the apex, I tell you what, as Mick Sutton definitely clatters the apex, but I tell you what, Paul Laramie's going to have a run on Mick Sutton here. So this is a brilliant drive from Paul Laramie, and I tell you what, this is bringing Brad Smith and Martin Johnson and John Jones all back into this picture. Really good racing from these lot. But yeah, as I was saying, if you've got a driver exactly like what I was going to say, going for the lunge like Mick Sutton did there, but didn't get his apex, he ran it on and ran wide. If contact happens during that move, we would then regard that as being a bit of an unfair move and a lunge that would cause a contact, because the driver hasn't got complete control of his car. That's the way a lot of clerks in real life would also see it. So for all you can show your nose and put a move on a car, if you can't hold your line by putting your nose there, that's probably saying you're running in with too much speed and you're not going to make the corner anyway, so you're going to use the car to keep yourself on track. Hope that sort of explains what you mean, Jack, but that's the way I see a fair move and a bit of an unfair move.
Yeah, it's a bit like a footballer going in for a two-footed challenge off, like when they jump into it off the floor, it's classified as out of control. You can't pull out of it. You just float yourself in there without really any fuss, and that's why they get red card, and I suppose that's why they get pinged for a penalty.
I'm going to quickly butt in, but I think, I could be wrong in saying this, with 1:30 to go, Walters looks like he's starting to close the gap a little bit to Nicky Taylor up in front.
0.8 of a second with only a lap to go, though. It's going to be.
It's possible. It's
possible, but we haven't seen the lap times come out. Well, I mean, realistically, Nicky Taylor's last lap was only about 0.3 of a second off his pole time, and Robin Walters has 0.8 of a second to find. So it's going to be very interesting if he can pull it off. That would mean that he's probably been hiding something, and he's just decided to ping it now. Anyway, Martin Johnson and Brad Smith are to go on to their final lap. Well, actually, to be fair, this may be the penultimate lap. I think it's actually going to be the penultimate lap. You're right, actually. Yeah, no, he would only have to eke in 0.4 of a second each lap, which is entirely possible. Martin Johnson and Brad Smith, there's a bit of a gap now, to be honest, as Mick Sutton goes to the apex on Paul Laramie, but it's not happening just yet. Going into Brooklands, though, we could see a change as Nicky Taylor is pulling a little bit of a gap out. Actually, it's pretty much neck and neck. I think it's down to 0.4 of a second. But I'm looking at my timing tower. I should be looking at what's happening on screen as Mick Sutton goes to the outside. Paul Laramie at Brooklands for the apex, but Sutton goes for the wide move. He can't get the car slowed down quick enough. And Smith, I think, and Johnson are side by side. No, he hasn't, has he? Oh, he will have it. That is quite incredible, Mick Sutton. I was also looking in the rearview mirror, but Sutton slots himself into 6th. Brilliant driving by him. Laramie in 7th, Smith in 8th, and Johnson trying his best to get into 8th place.
It is indeed. Look at this. Robin Walters in the last lap is now down to 0.6 of a second. So he's took 0.2 out of the lap time. Will he be close enough to make this count? He's down to 0.4 in fact. 0.4 going on the last lap onto the back straight. I think that's a little bit too far to get any form of slipstream. I think, unfortunately, if Nicky Taylor just keeps this nice and straight, we're not going to see an over-the-line battle here. I think Nicky Taylor's got this as long as he keeps it nice and straight. Nathan Blank, what a drive. 3rd place. 7 seconds is the gap now, which would suggest to me the second race that we're going to see is going to Nicky Taylor and Robin Walters as we go 3 abreast down towards Luffield. Oh my God, I don't know whether I want to commentate on this, but 3 abreast, and Martin Johnson, this Mick Sutton's gone wide. Paul Laramie's going to try and get the undercut, and I tell you what, Brad Smith has gone from running, 8th place up into 6th on the last lap, 2nd to last corner. Fair play, Brad Smith.
Martin Johnson will have the best run out of the final corner, though. He didn't run quite as wide as maybe he needed to as Laramie closed the door, snaps his nose off. If he was a snowman, you could eat his nose for lying on the floor there. It's absolutely sensational stuff as Brad Smith takes home 6th place, Sutton in 7th, Laramie in 8th, and Johnson just about in 9th place. He was really struggling to, really trying, sorry, to get into 8th. John Jones in 10th and will take pole position. Kenny Preston 11th, Hayden Phillips ends up in 12th, and Simon Thorpe will be 13th, and Adams will be 14th. But Nicky Taylor confirmed as taking that race victory. Robin Walters in 2nd place. I don't think we saw them cross the line, but we all knew what positions they were going to be. Nathan Blank, as Dave said, was in 3rd in the end with a brilliant race as well. Carl Felvus in 4th, Paul Zanatechi rounding out the top 5, and then you know how it finished from 6th down to 10th. We don't need to read you that one again. Now, Dave, you have a couple of podium sitters for us to chat to, so why don't you take it away with 3rd place Nathan Blank?
Yeah, we will indeed, Nathan. A phenomenal result there, and I'm going to say, I think looking at it, probably the cleanest car on the grid there with hardly any damage on your car. I mean, great drive there to pull yourself back through the grid. Did you do what you wanted to do in qualifying, or did you feel like you really showed your pace that you actually had in race 1 there?
No, I was a couple of attempts behind in qualifying. I think my race time is 1:04.9, which doesn't often happen where your race time's quicker than quali. So I'm not sure if Kyle will agree with me having the cleanest car on the track. I thought there was possibly a situation going into Brooklands there where I was trying to keep momentum, but you know, he's a competitive guy, and we'll see.
Well, everyone's on this grid to be competitive and racing. Robin can be racing, but it has to stay reasonably fair. From what we saw, it was a very, very good race indeed, Nathan. I take it you're thinking the job in the second race is going to be a little bit harder than what it was in the first, though. Yeah,
I'm sure. It's reverse grid, will it be? Top 10?
Reverse top 10, yeah. So you start 7th on the grid, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I look forward to it. Obviously, I'm quite new to this, so passing people's challenge and something new, but it's a learning curve, and I've progressed quite a lot with the help of yourself and the guys at VRRC.
Yeah, I mean, we'll quickly touch upon that. We were saying, you know, it wasn't too long ago we were seeing you in that sort of 10th and bottom of the grid area, and it hasn't taken long, and you seem to be especially gelling with these cars, and you're running up in that top 5, and now your first podium position.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. Like I say, I can't speak highly enough for the work that yourself and Rich put into VRRC, and the help and educating, especially in the academy sector. It's invaluable. I learn more from listening to you guys than I do racing.
Well, that's great to hear, and I've just been corrected by Tom O'Farrell, because that shows how bad my maths are. Your 8th place start, not 7th. So good luck from 8th place on the grid, and good, as I say, good luck going forward into race 2, Nathan.
Thank you, Dave.
Move forward on our P2 finisher, Robin Walters. I mean, it was a decent start from everyone on the grid, but it just seemed like Nicky managed just to get that nose, and you kept him through the whole way to the line, but just not quite enough to make any sort of moves on him and start to make him battle that hard.
Yeah, it's what you said after qualifying, really. You alluded to it there, that it's quite important to sort of get up front, I think, in this, in these cars at any track, really. But yeah, just not quite as good a start as I was anticipating. But to be fair, I was possibly expecting Kyle to be shooting up the outside as well. So I sort of, at that point, I was taking 2nd place. I was thinking, yeah, this is okay. I've not lost too much. So yeah, and then obviously a really, really sort of tense and good race with Nicky from there on.
Yeah, I mean, were you thinking at all where I was saying about the possibility where you just get with a guy and work with him to get a good, solid result finish, and then, you know, race 2 will be what it'll be, thinking more of the championship at the moment rather than thinking of outright wins and possibly, you know, ending up with contact and bringing you back into the bunch behind?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, actually. I can't say that I sort of settled for 2nd. That wasn't the case. But no, you're quite right. There was a part in that race where the tyres started to go off a little bit, sort of around the 10-minute mark. Copse corner became the hardest corner in the world, and 2nd place didn't look so bad, especially considering sort of 2 podium finishes last week. I mean, if I can finish podium every race, I'll be right there, I reckon. So yeah, possibly so, Dave.
Well, huge congratulations, Robin, on taking a P2, and good luck for race 2.
Thanks, Dave.
I'll move forward on our race winner. I mean, Nicky, to be pipped by 5,000ths of a second in qualifying, it must feel good to redeem yourself with getting that race 1 win, and it was dominant basically from turn 1.
Yeah, I basically predicted qualifying. No, I said Robin will get pole, and he did, so that was good. But yeah, I've just got the start nailed. Realised how to start these cars now eventually, which helps. And like Robin said, with turn 1, got about for the 7-minute mark, my tyres just decided to fall off a cliff. So I just was trying to just keep it on the track as much as I could, and yeah, just basically got away, and that was that.
Well, there's not much else to report on really, but with a minute to go before the start of the race, I'll let you get your head down and get your concentration sorted, Nicky. Good luck coming back from P10, and we'll hopefully be speaking after race 2.
Cool, cheers, yeah. Podium, hopefully.
And there we go, Jack. I mean, to be fair, Robin and Nicky both sound like they've got it pretty level-headed, and they're just thinking about bringing home the points.
Well, at the end of the day, we are early in the championship, I suppose,
Yeah.
and points is what you need, isn't it? Sensible races is what you need. So, I mean, from a spectator's point of view, I'm very much hoping they absolutely send it, but I suppose they're probably thinking along other lines.
Hang on, we're talking about Nicky Taylor. He is all full send, so there's no doubt we're going to get full send.
I didn't know he had another setting, to be honest. It's just like his brake bias is stuck on one position. He just sort of sends it at the apex. So, yeah, I can't wait for it. But we've obviously got another race about to come up, only about 19 seconds. So, to be honest, Dave, you timed that perfectly. And hopefully the guys will have had a little bit of time to just chill out and get ready for what is another 20 minutes full of action here at Silverstone in the Academy, powered by VRRC Clio Cup. And here we go. The engine notes rise. The lights are coming on, and we're going to have another race start here for another 20-minute gallivanting trip around the Silverstone circuit. There's already contact as one of the drivers, I think that was Martin Johnson, cuts across John Jones, who didn't get a good start. Mick Sutton around the outside, I think we'll be taking P2 through Copse Corner. Now, I think John Jones just about holds on to it. I'm not entirely sure as we fly down towards Maggotts and Beckett's. Yeah, he does actually, but Mick Sutton's not giving it up. He's going to have the apex on the left, but he's going to be wide for Maggotts and Beckett's, and there's going to be contact inevitably almost as all drivers try and fly through the apex of the corner. And it looks like Brad Smith and Zadatachi are swapping positions, but rather go down to Brooklands, Dave. It's basically anybody's guess apart from first position, because Johnson has that sewn up. Taylor gets up the inside of up alongside Felvus, up the inside of Laramie. That makes it 3 wide down into Brooklands. Sutton goes up past Jones, and I think Taylor goes past Laramie. Zadatachi goes past Smith. But it's all going to change basically when we get round to the first corner, especially if they make contact like that. Zadatachi off the circuit, another driver off ahead of him, which I think is Paul Laramie. So 2 of the biggest protagonists in race number 1, unfortunately off the circuit at the beginning of race 1. Mick Sutton has flown off the circuit somewhere. I'm not entirely sure where though. He rejoins as we go 3 wide between Press, Walters and Nathan Blank. And there goes Nathan Blank through, actually. So it wasn't Walters and Nathan Blank. I'm not entirely sure who it is, to be honest. But it's Smith, Walters, Taylor, Press, and Blank are involved in this picture right now, Dave. Who's going to be brave enough to call this one? Not me, that's for sure. Blank's on the right-hand side, Press is on the left, and then in front of them is Taylor and William Walters, who were obviously P1 and P2 in race number 1. It's pretty much impossible to figure this one out, but all I can say is Martin Johnson's in the race lead.
Yeah, Martin Johnson has absolutely gone, hasn't he? Nearly 3 seconds up the road already. And you've got to remember, he looked like he had good pace in race 1, but there was the altercation at the start. Nathan Blank super late on the brakes, heading in towards Kenny Press there. Robin Walters and Taylor just in front, so if you're looking at that gun, you know what, they aren't too far up ahead. There's been contact between Paul Zanatechi. Scott Thorne is off, and Zanatechi is off in the last corner. Hopefully he can get that restarted and rejoin behind Paul Laramie there. But I tell you what, Walters and Nicky Taylor are starting to work the way up, but Martin Johnson has gone 3 seconds up the road. That's going to take some catching.
It is indeed, especially if everybody keeps falling over each other. And to be honest, as we were commentating yesterday, as you know, Dave, on the Super Touring Championship, it's given me a very sore throat, and these guys have not helped at all with the condition of it, to be honest. John Jones and Smith are still going side by side, and that's a huge hit of the curb. I think that's by Nicky Taylor and Robin Walters.
Taylor, yeah.
This is a fight, what was last race, for 1 and 2. Walters has been given an opportunity that he didn't have in the first race, and that is to overtake Nicky Taylor. Nicky Taylor obviously overtook him to gain first place, and then they never really got a chance to actually fight back at it. But as Taylor tries to take as tight a line as possible, this is going to be... I'll tell you what, Dave, that is something else, isn't it? I mean, really, the racing respect between those two, the smallest of margins that could have gone wrong, and we've seen it so many times where people run wide on the apex and they make contact and they run each other wide and they lose 2 positions with the drivers behind. But that was spot on, pinpoint accuracy by Taylor and Walters, who are still trying to reignite it. But with Taylor, well, we told you it was elbows out. He only has one setting, and he proved it there.
Yeah, and you know what? This is exactly the case. If it was a brilliant move by Nicky, round the outside, knew which gap he wanted, but it was also the racing and respect that Robin Walters gave that made the move look as good as what it was. It would have been very easy for Robin to see him start to go for that move around the outside, put his foot in a little bit more and make it look like there just wasn't the room around the outside. Nicky would have had to back out. So brilliant race and respect between these two drivers, and I bet for that reason both of them are going to respect each other a little bit more as Nicky Taylor goes late on the brakes, straighten up quite a lot. This is going to put Robin Walters back on the case, and I tell you what, they've got to be careful because Nathan Blank isn't too far off now.
Yeah, as we said before in race 1, Nathan Blank is certainly going to be someone we're going to have to keep an eye on. And Tom O'Farrell, who obviously does the broadcast, he's not only doing all the cameras and all the broadcasting and all the sound leveling and everything, he's also feeding us information. So multi-talented he is. As Jones!
Oh, John Jones!
Oh, is that a bit of a repeat of what we've seen in race 1 potentially? I think he's going to be one of the top drivers on the list of people to talk to, shall we say, when we get round to the traditionals and maybe some coaching sessions. But that is unfortunate because that was a really good race Brad Smith was having, and now it's obviously been scuppered somewhat. But as I mentioned, Tom O'Farrell, he said that Martin Johnson at Brands Hatch in race number 2, the reverse grid race, he got a massive margin at the start. He just let everybody else fall over each other, and then he managed to take the victory, even though he was being caught hand over fist. But he still took the victory because he just maintained that margin and just put his head down. And he's doing exactly that as Carl Felvus is trying to catch him. To be honest, it's not happening immediately, shall we say.
Yeah, and I tell you what, this is starting to develop. It was Nathan Blank looks like he runs a little bit wide. Got to be careful doing that. That's where the back end can just snatch you as you try and rejoin the track and you get spat off left. He's lost a little bit of traction here and lost a bit of momentum on the back of Robin Walters and Taylor. Let's see how Taylor deals with John Jones. If John Jones tries anything like that, Taylor, I guarantee I know probably what's coming. Kyle Felvus though, 2.5 seconds off Martin Johnson now. That gap's starting to come down. 14 minutes left of this race. He's done half a second. It was up to 3 seconds the gap. He's took half a second off. 15 minutes to go. I tell you what, this could be close by the time it gets to the end of the race. That could be a real battle for first and second as it gets into the final stages of this race.
Yeah, it could well be, but I'll tell you one person who will be very keen to get up there as quick as possible, and that'll be Felvus. Not only because obviously it's best just to be in the race lead, but because
look at this!
I'll get back to my point in a minute, because Taylor versus Walters is heating up, and they're being held up somewhat by John Jones, and this is exactly feeding into what I was about to say with Felvus. If Felvus gets into the race lead, he's going to have a bigger gap than he wants, because Jones is holding everybody up, and he's seeing exactly what I'm talking about right now as Nathan Blank tries to get past Walters, as Walters had to go for the move on Taylor. Didn't have a choice in it really, because Jones is holding them up as Blank runs a little bit wide through Cops. Walters holds that inside line, that outside line, and just about loses out. But I don't think he's going to lose out to Kenny Press, as we see a drive off in the background. That's Hayden Phillips in the rearview mirror. I just caught that. There he is. He's on the right-hand side, and not the right side, the right-hand side, unfortunately. Nathan Blank then. We're back on board. Let's just take a second to compute what we're seeing in front of us. That's John Jones in 3rd place, holding off Nicky Taylor. Robin Walters went for the move. It didn't happen. Nathan Blank went for the move. It didn't happen. So Nathan Blank is back, making another move. Will it happen this time? It's a sharp break into the inside of the corner. Robin Walters trying to hold on to it. But I think Blank is going to have the position, and he has the position. Really well carried, really well done by Robin Walters, who carried an enormous amount of speed through Brooklands and into Luffield. and he takes 5th place as Nicky Taylor is still stuck behind John Jones. That is the only crumb of comfort for Walters and Blank, who really need to work together to catch the race 1 winner.
Yeah, they do indeed, and this is Taylor up ahead, just trying to calculate when is the place to make this overtake happen without putting any risk on. But I tell you what, he's got to get the move done sooner or later, because Nathan Blank is now on the move. He's got past Robin Walters. I think that was a little bit because of Robin Walters, not managing to get round the outside of Luffield, so he slowed himself down there. Nicky Taylor's going to have the slipstream here on the back of John Jones. John Jones is defending the left-hand line, so he's making Nicky go round the outside line here. But I tell you what, look at the speed differential after having a little bit of that slipstream. It's no other option there. John Jones has to brake slightly earlier and tuck that in, and there is Nicky Taylor through into P3, and now it's all for Nathan Blank and Robin Walters to do without tripping over themselves.
Yeah, Felvus took half a second out of Martin Johnson. Tom Fowler's just reminded me, I was about to mention it though, because obviously with Taylor being released away from John Jones, means that Taylor is now free to try and catch up to Carl Felvus. Now, if we think back to qualifying, Felvus qualified in 3rd place. Taylor was on pole. Taylor was in 2nd. The gap was only about 1/10.5 to 2/10 of a second. So realistically, he's got 3.5 seconds to catch. If they're doing qualifying pace, which they probably will end up doing over the next 4 or 5 minutes or so, the gap's only going to come down by about 2 seconds, I would imagine. It's going to be very tight to see if he can catch up to Felvus towards the end. Felvus obviously doesn't really want to worry about that at all. He just needs to get past Johnson, who's, again, doing an absolutely fantastic job. As Walters tries to go past Blank on the outside, I was thinking maybe he was going to fake a move, but he's actually trying to box in John Jones. He's trying to box him in, isn't he? He's trying to force John Jones to hold up Blank so he can flow the move around the outside, but actually Blank comes too far away from the apex of Luffield and actually allows Walters to get up his inside. Walters forces Blank wide, I think completely fairly, to be honest. I mean, just Walters had the line and Blank tried to hold it around the outside, and I don't think there was any contact that forced Blank into the gravel. Just a really good racing move by Walters to put his car exactly where it needed to be.
Yeah, no contact at all. I think that was a case of Robin managed to get up the inside of Nathan early on into Brooklands, into the right-hander, and it was just a case of Nathan saw that, tried to get on that throttle a little bit too early, pushed on the front end and just about caught that gravel, which was just enough to bring back that momentum. But you can see it hasn't took long at all, because Robin's now behind John Jones. Nathan Blank has really managed to close quite early on the back of it. I tell you what, John Jones is doing a good defensive drive here. He stayed left. He's forcing the car to go around the outside through Luffield, which it looks like it's going to be tight going into the right-hander. Look at this, Nathan Blank has ended up in a good position here. Will he get the cutback on Robin Walters? And Mick Sutton's looking at this going out and pick up all his pieces here.
I was going to say, I think Robin Walters will be going through this thinking he's Tom Cruise, because he's just living, dying and repeating at this rate, isn't he? He's just having to, every single time he wants to go for a move, it ends up just falling away from him. And as he said, he's just under attack from the car behind constantly. He's damned if he does. He's damned if he goes for the move, he's damned if he doesn't, isn't he? Nathan Blank is still at the hot seat to take him. But that will help. John Jones running very wide will help enormously as Walters goes through and is able to take the racing line. Here comes Mick Sutton attacking Nathan Blank. You can see it filling up the rear view mirrors of Nathan Blank, and believe me, Nathan will see that as well. It's exactly what Mick Sutton is counting on. Felvus has slowed up just a touch on one lap, but he's back on the pace now as Nicky Taylor caught him back up. Here comes Mick Sutton on the inside. We know Mick from race 1 is not afraid of getting his elbows out either. He's keen to try and get forward as John Jones locks the brakes up, and I think that's caused Mick Sutton to run really wide. We saw Mick Sutton run very wide through a number of race 1 and race 1 of the corners, and he's just done it then again. He's held on to 7th place, but Nathan Blank back up the inside and is attacking John Jones. Robin Walters has checked out. Goodbye.
Yeah, so I think probably Mick will be watching this, and he'll probably watch it back and know exactly what's going on. He's just trying a little bit too hard to press the braking areas a little bit too much and just running too much speed in, stopping the car from getting rotated. This is a great chance for Nathan. He's got the overspeed. He needs to commit to this. I know it's going to get tight, but he needs to get past this car up around the outside. He's left too much room, I would have said. He's late on the brakes. He's going to have to cut the corner. He's run himself over, and I tell you what, John Jones is going to get back up the inside, and Mick Sutton's going to follow. a bit of a nightmare there from Nathan, but yet again, another thing that he can definitely learn from.
Yeah, and this is basically the point of the championship, isn't it? To try and learn this kind of racecraft, so when you come up against the big boys, you don't ruin anybody's day, essentially, and you're in the best stead to try and make the moves. And Nathan Blank's still behind John Jones as Sutton goes through. Nathan just can't seem to hack this, getting past a slightly slower driver. And I've been in Nathan's situation in real life, Dave, to be honest, where you are ultimately faster than the driver ahead, but just not quite in the right areas. And they seem to be putting the car right where they need to be just to hold you specifically up. And then you see other drivers absolutely fly by because they're half decent on the exit, whereas I was always quite good flowing mid-corner speed. But I was always a bit other drivers who had really good exit speed or really good entry speed were more they had an opportunity at overtaking drivers, where if you have good mid-corner speed, you just get held up, don't you? So it's really difficult for Blank right now to try and get past Jones as we flick back to Laramie versus Phillips.
Yeah, this looks like an interesting little battle. Paul Laramie's just having a little cheeky look there. I'll tell you what, this is bringing Brad Smith a little bit back into the picture. I imagine Brad Smith's probably feeling fair done out about that. He was in a really good position, and I'd imagine a protest is probably going to be launched after this based upon that. But I tell you what, Nick Sutton starting to make headways onto the back of Robin Walters. Now he's clear of John Jones. 5 minutes left in the race. Is it a little bit too late to get that done? Maybe so, but it's not too late for Nathan to get past John Jones. Let's see if he can get back on there. 0.3 of a second off now, almost in that slipstream bracket. This is going to get interesting.
I tell you what, I am extremely impressed with Martin Johnson again. We'll talk about him in a second, because yet again, Nathan Blank has got a good run on John Jones, and John's coming across him, but I don't think there's going to be any stopping Nathan Blank this time. And just like we saw earlier on with Robin Walters going past him, it will be on the apex of Maggotts and Beckett. Sorry, Church is the one after that. And it's a good move there by Nathan Blank. He'll be probably wishing he had a slightly better exit, because John Jones might get a slipstream on him here, and that might just invite John Jones to have a look, and we know what he's been like over this course of this race. But to be fair, since that contact with Brad Smith, he's actually raced really fairly and done a good defensive drive. So, maybe he's learning from that experience before.
This is exactly what I say about drivers. The thing is, mistakes do happen. We're all human. And at the end of the day, sometimes all it takes is a little bit of contact, and then the driver at the end just to go, my bad, sorry, missed me braking marker. And then, normally a sorry is enough. You probably know that from the real world, Jack. I know it's sometimes a hard pill to swallow at the time it happens, but you calm down, racing happens, and you never know. The future race, maybe you just don't give him quite as much of a hard time if he's behind you, and wave him through as a bit of a goodwill gesture. So things like that do definitely happen in the real world. But I tell you what, for me, Nathan Blank, for me, this race has really, really impressed me. He's been patient. Yes, he didn't get through quite as quick as Mick Sutton, Nicky Taylor, Robin Walters, but he's shown real progression in his driving at the moment. And I don't know whether you've noticed, but he's been really, really good at hitting them consistent braking markers, going down towards Luffield and getting that apex every time. And that is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't mention last week, and I don't think we awarded one actually, is obviously we've got to think about driver of the round. Now, there's a fair few people that were probably interested in giving this one to be honest. Nicky Taylor and Robin Walters are two obvious candidates because of how well they did in race 1, and obviously how they carved through the field in race 2, as we're just seeing Kenny Press look on John Jones. Nathan Blank's another one of those drivers who Nathan came from a bit further back in race number 1 to get 3rd place, and again, he's not progressed as much as Taylor and Walters, but he's still done a good job up to 6th place. Mick Sutton's always been around that fight as well. Maybe made 1 or 2 too many mistakes, it could be argued. I don't know. We've got 3 minutes. Why don't you let us know in the YouTube chat who do you think is a potential driver of the round for you as well. Dave, have you got any sort of thoughts? Maybe you're angling or leaning towards 2 drivers in particular?
Yeah, I mean, Nicky Taylor and Robin, you're right. They have both done stellar jobs of driving here. Martin Johnson, we shouldn't take the credit away from him. He's drove absolutely mega in this last stint as the tyres are starting to go off. Really good stint from him. Good composure to keep putting them laps in. But for me, Nathan Blank, this has been the round for him. The breakthrough, a little bit of confidence. The first podium he's had in race 1. He's up into P6, but showed really, really good driving and racecraft here. So for me, Nathan probably gets the vote, but that's between about 5 drivers that could have definitely had it.
Yeah, and I would say, obviously, you mentioned that Nathan had a clean car earlier on, and he openly admitted that obviously there was a bit of contact with Carl Felvus. But you know, realistically, he was brave enough to openly say that in the middle of the race evening as well. So I think that's pretty admirable. And as he said, I think apart from that potentially one incident, which is pretty good for any of these drivers to only have one incident, it's, you know, I think he's driven very, very well and very respectfully for a lot of this as well. So I would probably angle towards Nathan Blank as well. I'm sure Adrian Felvus, who's always watching the streams, and actually I can see him in the Facebook chat, he'll probably end up voting for Kyle. But to be honest, Adrian, you've already had a Power Max balloting kit yesterday. We're going to look elsewhere. Don't get too greedy now.
I tell you what, I hope he votes for Kyle. He should do.
Yeah, you would hope so, being his dad and all that sort of thing. But, you know, I've seen other... my dad certainly said otherwise when my brother's been racing.
This could be a battle to really watch. Kyle is going to have to defend with everything he's got here, calculate this slipstream. I was saying on Monday in the coaching session, it's really important going on this back straight. One of the biggest things we're racing is, if you're the lead driver, try and control where the car behind goes. Don't let him try and put his nose in places where you don't want him. So Kyle's doing that exactly what I said. He says, if you're going to go down to Luffield, put the driver on the outside. You don't want to get him on the inside, because once he gets that line, it's job done. Kyle just needs to roll off the brakes here, make it a little bit harder for Nicky Taylor, and that's exactly what he did. Look at that. Nicky Taylor had to back out of it. There wasn't the room there. Brilliant defensive driving. Well done, Kyle Felvus.
Yeah, he's done very well, because realistically he was well ahead, wasn't he? And if Taylor had kept his nose in and there was contact, it probably would have been blamed on Nicky Taylor, because he didn't have the corner, because he was less than half a car's width back, obviously. So yeah, really well done. And it's tight, isn't it? Really, you're just playing a game of chicken going into that corner, and it's such a split decision that you have to make, and you have to hopefully put your trust in the other driver to make that split decision the most sensible option, I suppose, and not just think, oh well, I'm going for it, I'll go for it, let's see if you whip out first, sort of thing. So really well done. I tell you what, one person who we're on the final lap, Dave. Martin Johnson has loved every minute of this race.
He will have done, yeah. And to be fair, I'm really glad for him. I really dislike it when I see a driver end up in the gravel trap, not necessarily through his own fault.
Sorry, Felvus has gone wide. Sorry, Dave, Felvus has gone wide, and that might leave Taylor an opportunity to get that cut back, but Felvus gets a... Hey, that's great driving by Felvus. He just held on to the apex. He could have held on for a little bit longer. And I think he's just about put his car right in the right place. Here comes Walters behind, but Martin Johnson is the race victor here at Silverstone. Really well done by him, and Felvus just holds on to second place, 800th of a second ahead of Nicky Taylor. Then Robin Walters, who was a fair old few seconds back, is now closed up to half a second into fourth place. But really good driving from the all four drivers, all the drivers, to be honest. Mick Sutton in fifth, Nathan Blank, John Jones, Kenny Press, and Brad Smith and Paul Zanatachi all round at the top 10. But so, I'm really sorry to cut across you like that, Dave, but I genuinely thought there was going to be a swap.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually thinking that probably Kyle's dad's probably on his feet watching this, going, just hold on to this, hold on to this.
Yeah, exactly.
I was nearly on my feet with that one. I thought Nicky Taylor had just done enough to have the run, but he actually ended up hitting into the back of Kyle instead of managing to get on the outside of it. But what fantastic racing that was. And there he is, the number 3, Martin Johnson. A big hats off to him. Brilliant drive. I know people's thinking he got the gap, but that is really hard to keep your concentration levels right up there and put lap after lap of good solid pace and hold his advantage to the end.
Would you believe it, Dave? Adrian has gone and voted for Carl for driving.
Has he indeed?
It's surprising that, isn't it? Apparently he doesn't get his Power Max balloting kit until Christmas. So if Kyle is here, I can't believe that he's going to have to he's going to give it to his dad as a Christmas present. That's quite incredible, isn't it? But anyway.
Well, you never know. He might win 2, and then he doesn't have to wait to give 1 till Christmas.
Well, exactly. Yeah, you never know, do you? But we have podium sitters to talk to. We'll chat about Christmas another time. Top 3, take it away, Dave.
Yeah, we will indeed. So we'll go straight down to Nicky Taylor. I thought you just about calculated that perfectly out of the last corner, but just ended up running to the back of Kyle Felvus there just before the line. But what a fantastic battle there, and really managed to close into them podium positions towards the end of the race.
Yeah, to be fair, I don't. I think I had a network issue because on my screen it didn't hear Kyle. But anyway, yeah, got through the pack all right, and then second to last lap got crowded off the circuit by Kyle. But yeah, we moved. But yeah, other than that, it was a great race. Got through, got past John as soon as possible, and then I think Robin just got held up a little bit behind, and then yeah, if Robin would have got through with me, I think he would have joined in our battle, and if the race would have been any longer than what it was, I think Robin would have had a strong chance of mugging us both. But yeah, decent race, 2 podiums, can't really complain.
Yeah, I mean, I know how much you love that corner at the end of the straight, Nicky. But yeah, I mean, I've got to quickly ask, regarding the slipstream on this track, we didn't really think the car was going to matter that much on slipstream, but it really seems actually, once this car gets up into them bigger gears, the slipstream has a really big effect at the end.
Oh yeah, no, I sort of noticed that in a bit of practice, because I was trying to get behind like Kyle and people like that in quali, because I know cars normally quite quick. So I tried to get behind, and I gained like 3 or 4 tenths just in the toe alone. So
yeah.
And then with Kyle not getting the toe, I know Kyle's clean air that isn't like his normal absolute blisteringly fast lap times around here. So I thought I could gain, and then I did, and just at the end, yeah, he just proved to be too quick at the end. But oh well. Hopefully, I think we're Donington next.
Yeah, it proved to be absolutely fantastic racing there, Nicky, and great to see you back on the podium in race 2 again, and looking good for your championship hopes as well. So let's see what you can do next round out.
Yeah, cool. Just need Robin to have a little bit of a bad race, maybe get stuck behind a few people, but oh well.
It wouldn't be a championship if that happened.
Nah, but we'll see. It's better this one. This one I've got more people challenging for the title, so a bit more fun.
Yeah, definitely. Well, good luck in the next round anyway, and we'll move forward into our P2 finisher. I mean, Kyle, you must have thought the pressure was starting to mount up there towards the end, but fair play, you managed to hold on to it.
Yeah, Nicky was getting really close at the end there, and just I think he got a little bit too close, which caused him to pat my rear end, which just pushed me to the finish line. But if he had pulled out just a little bit sooner, I think that could have been a photo finish.
Yeah, and I've got to ask quickly, was that a case of just pushing the car a little bit too hard, or was the tyres starting to go off at the end a little bit, and that's why you weren't managing to cut, because you were starting to close the gap on Martin Johnson, but then seemed to drop away a little bit again?
Yeah, Martin, I think I gained a few tenths, then lost them. I don't know. I think we had quite similar pace because the time seemed to stay the same. But then at the end, Nicky just had more pace. That's how he caught up to me.
Well, fair play, Kyle, and congratulations on putting it P2 in race 2, and looking forward to seeing how you go next time out.
Thank you.
And move forward on our P1 finisher, Martin Johnson. It wasn't the race one at all that you wanted, but we knew you had the pace in the car, and it was definitely the start that you needed, getting 3 seconds away from the rest of the pack and putting a super controlled drive to bring home P1.
Yeah, cheers, Dave. I must admit, sitting on the grid, it was nice to hear John mention that he was going to struggle getting off the line, so I knew I'd be able to probably get into the first corner first, and then the plan really was just to try and break the toe.
Yeah.
You know, as has been said previously, the toe does have an effect when you're up close. And I knew the quicker guys had come through. Like Kyle just said, we had that kind of, he'd gain a couple of tenths, I'd gain a couple of tenths, and I was happy I could keep that gap. And the plan was just to try and hope that someone like Robin or Nicky would catch him up, and it kind of played into my hands at the end.
Yeah, well, it was still a stellar drive, and I was saying, for all that it looked easy on stream, getting out in front and keeping that lead, it's quite hard to actually keep that concentration up and keep putting them lap times in every time while you're watching the lap counter just keep coming down. I take it there wasn't really any moments that you switched off, but it is quite mentally draining, isn't it, just to keep putting them laps in even though you're not getting the pressure?
Yeah, definitely. The two races are completely different. Obviously, the first race, I had an incident quite early on. I had to find my way back, and I knew if I could get close to that kind of 10th or 9th, I'd have a chance in race 2. But like you say, I lose concentration quite easily. I have quite a lot of information on the screen, and it's so tempting to start looking at someone else's lap time and take your eye off the ball. But thankfully, managed to keep concentration when it mattered most.
Well, huge congratulations there, Martin, and massive respect for managing to keep that lap time consistent in all that open space. Really look forward to seeing what you can bring to the table next time out.
Cheers, Dave.
And we'll quickly move on. A last word with our driver of the round, Nathan Blank. It was a great race too. Yes, he didn't quite get through as quick as some of the drivers around you, but I mean, real good race and respect, and your awareness just seems so switched on now in these cars and this track.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I had a terrible start. I was just asking Rich there because I'm really still learning, you know, can I sit in first with the clutch down, rev in before the start, or I'm risking a false start? I don't know. So at the start, I'm sitting in neutral, I'm revving, I'm ready to drop the gear, drop the clutch, and just went backwards about 3 spots. Got past a couple of people and then let them pass again, and then I think I got past, I'm not sure if it was John or something, and just couldn't keep the pace of Mick. Good pace throughout the race, really. So disappointed in the start.
I mean, to me, it seems like you've had a real good momentum shift, and it's looking positive in your driving style. And I tell you what, going forward into Donington, you must be on a bit of a wave here. You're thinking, you know what, actually, we've seen really good progress, and I can keep this going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, I was taking my medicine today. I thought in places where I wouldn't have done before, I'd just stayed in it and ended up in the wall along with someone else, and it paid off, really. You know, a 3rd and a 6th or something like that in the second race. So over the moon, if I'm honest.
Huge congratulations and well done on driving the day, Nathan.
That's really great. Thank you very much.
And there we go, Jack. All the interviews done. And I tell you what, that didn't disappoint, did it, going forward into Silverstone?
No, and if anybody is just tuned into the stream and think, oh, damn, I missed it, well, go back and watch it, because it has produced this championship table with Robin Walters, 63 points, Nicky Taylor, 62 points, and Carl Felvus, 61 points. 2 points the difference between first and third, and then there's probably not that big a gap. Well, there's only a 5-point gap to Martin Johnson, who keeps picking up those reverse grid wins. If you can carry that on, he'll be in good stead, to be honest, won't he, Dave? Because all it'll take is 1 or 2 bad rounds or bad races for the top 3, and all of a sudden Martin Johnson's in with the shout at top 3.
I mean, the thing is, Martin Johnson definitely showed in race 2. He has the pace. It was just he was really unfortunate twice in race 1, where he's managed to pull himself back to that reverse grid position. And you've got to remember, if he hadn't managed to do that, I mean, that has catastrophic effects on this championship table. So fair play to him to keep his head in it even after being taken out and getting through to that reverse grid pole. And then look, Nathan Blank's bringing himself back into that picture now. A really good set of results. He's not too far off the back. He was still, 4 rounds left to go.
Yeah, and Paul Zadatachi, after a poor Silverstone, is still there. It shows how good his brand touch was, and we know he can pedal around the rest of the tracks as well. So, looking forward to seeing how everybody gets on. But one thing's for certain, it's a very open championship, let's put it that way, especially those top 3 pulling away initially. Anyway, it's about that time that we probably seal off the evening, Dave, isn't it? Mainly because we haven't got any other drivers to speak to, and mainly because my voice is absolutely killing. If you are interested in more action, however, next Tuesday we have the Super Touring Championship round 2 at Thruxton. If you didn't catch what happened yesterday, it was quite simply sensational. A lot of the Academy drivers were involved. They have 2 classes, a gold and a silver. A lot of the Academy drivers are in silver, and the gold drivers are just steps above some of the best sim racers around, really. So you really want to catch into that. So if you want a bit of a 90s super touring nostalgia of Volvos, the Nissans, and the BMWs, then you want to make sure that you're tuning in next Tuesday around 7:30 p.m. It's about the same format and about the same time as the Academy. So if you've been watching tonight, you'll be wanting to watch next week. And if you're wondering about the Academy, well, it's round 3 at Donington Park. We heard it a couple of times in the interviews, but there is the confirmation of it starting at 7:20, exactly the same time, exactly the same place as you've been watching today. So please do subscribe and keep an eye out on when that's going live as well. So Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you once again. What are your thoughts? I mean, obviously you run the coaching sessions in between each round. Give us a very quick synopsis of maybe what you're thinking the next lessons will be.
I think definitely what it has shown, it's definitely highlighted the fact if you work with a driver and don't battle too hard, you can really pull some serious time. So the likes of going forward into Snetterton and the likes of Thruxton, that slipstream and working together instead of always thinking I just need to be in front of that next guy in front, can actually play a huge part in thinking of the bigger picture and thinking of the championship battle. So honestly, very, very impressed with some of the driving standards here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a big thank you from me and a big thank you from Dave for tuning in. If you have tuned in and you've liked and subscribed, then a big thank you to you. If you've tuned in and silently judged us, then that's absolutely fine as well. At least you've tuned in. We're still very grateful to have you along for the ride. Congratulations to all the podium sitters and in fact all the drivers who have enjoyed this evening as well. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, isn't it? From us two here, Jack Oliphant and Dave Marshall, and of course our broadcaster, Tom O'Farrell. We'll be back next week on Tuesday and Wednesday for Super Touring Car Championship and the Academy. Good night.
The inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Woo!